welcome to Pensar Basketball. And today we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to be talking mainly about the Toronto Raptors' last championship and how they can build a contender in this current iteration of the Toronto Raptors with Scottie Barnes and RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, and whether the formula for building a contender has changed since the last time the Raptors did it, largely because Tetrahedron saying, "Did you set up the new mic arm?" My dog, Rob. No, I didn't, but I want to share. I wanted to share this a little bit later in the live because it's probably too early for personal anecdotes. But this came today. I was walking my dog, and I came back home and I saw this in front of the door, and I had a feeling that unless someone had shipped me, like a kilo of stuff or whatever, it was probably an Amazon package, and it was. And yeah, it was a boom arm. It's really cool. I was gonna record a video of unboxing or whatever. I've never done one of those, but it was really cool to receive a gift. So thank you to the community member who sent that. That's really cool. It was via the Amazon gift list. So thank you for that. I will set that up tomorrow. And so from now on, we will have a boom arm and I don't have to carry this. So it'll just be like in a place. And then I have both my hands to be super animated, right? Um, okay, let's talk about the Toronto Raptors. Like I grew up I grew up a Raptor fan. I haven't been here since '95, like some of you, but I jumped on the bandwagon around 2000, 2001, and so I've seen a lot of bad teams, and I got to witness a really great team, and I got to be a part of something, or I felt like I was a part of something really special. I got to march on the street, and 5 years ago to this day, well, yesterday, 5 minutes ago, the Toronto Raptors won an NBA championship. It still feels sort of surreal to say that. And the only thing that was a little bit bittersweet about that moment was all the uncertainty that followed. I remember Doris Burke. I think it was Doris Burke who literally asked Kawhi as he was celebrating the championship what he was going to do in the summer. So I think it begs the question, do you how do you do it differently this time around, right? What can you do differently to achieve a different result, right? Um, Tariq saying, "Bro, Summer 19 was a movie." True. Yo, Rob, would you tear up if Scotty wins us a chip? Yes, definitely. Like, I think there are different ways to win a championship, and I know that ultimately everything is judged based on championships, right? But there are championships that feel different, that are different in terms of meaning. And I really pray that the Toronto Raptors are able to win a championship that is a different type of championship. Let me explain. When Michael Jordan won his first championship in Chicago, or when Kobe and Shaq won their first championship in LA, it felt like we were on the ground floor of something. Okay. It felt like we were at the start of something that could become a dynasty. The immediate thought was, who's going to stop this team? If the OKC Thunder win a championship next year, it will feel very similar. If the Boston Celtics win a championship tomorrow, I think to some extent it could feel similar because the long-term future of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and some of their core pieces, Kristaps Porzingis, etc., their head coach, are not in question. I think for the Toronto Raptors, what would be very amazing would be to do this earlier in Scottie's career as opposed to trying to do it later. Now, I mentioned this in a very long live. Happy anniversary to you too. I mentioned this in a very long live that I felt that Darko Rajakovic was misquoted in terms of what he said to the Serbian media, in terms of when he felt the Raptors would be looking to contend. And a lot of people and a lot of other channels that I just happened to stumble across today are using that to suggest that the Raptors will not be looking to be even competitive next year. And I think that that is a gross misreading of what he said. So what I would like to do today is really outline the path forward for the Toronto Raptors to build not just a team that can win a championship, but a team that has 5 or 6 shots at a championship. Now, that's hard to do. Okay. It's going to be really hard to do. And I hate to say it, it's even harder to do in Toronto. You know, I don't, y'all know me. I'm not one of those people that say, oh, this is hard because it's Toronto. That's hard because it's Toronto. But building a championship is harder in Toronto because you don't necessarily get the same free agency benefits that a lot of other big markets get. But hey, San Antonio wasn't a huge market and they built a championship. It starts with that first guy. It starts with a championship caliber piece that sees a long-term vision of himself with your organization. It starts with building trust with that player. It starts with getting ownership and buy-in from that player. I think that process started last summer with Scottie Barnes, or sorry, this summer with Scottie Barnes, and last season towards the end with Scottie. Getting that long-term buy-in from him, it's like owning versus renting, right? You don't want to be renting players. I'm not suggesting owning players. What I'm trying to say is you want players to feel like they're a part of something and that they have a vested interest in seeing it grow, right? There's a reason why people treat rental properties where they're renting differently than people who own condos. The way they treat their property is a little bit different because there's an ownership stake there. So you got to get that buy-in. The second thing you got to get is a synergy or a compatibility between your head coach and your star player. And I think the Raptors got that. They didn't have that between Scottie and Nick Nurse, but they have that, I believe, with Scottie and Darko Rajakovic. So that's 2 steps that you've got to take. Now, you and I can probably disagree on whether Scottie's right now the caliber of player who can lead you to a championship. But hey, if he does it in 2 years, we'll be singing a completely different tune, right? I don't think that Scottie is that different than Jason Tatum. I think he's better, honestly. Like I think he will be a better player, but I don't think it's that different in terms of the outlook. So I do think you can win a championship with Scottie Barnes as your best player. I do think that long term, you will have to ensure that you have a buy-in between him and Darko Rajakovic that you can build forward. The third thing is you need to build championship culture. You need to build winning habits, accountability. There are certain things that all championship teams have in common. Um, they are a team that solves their problems. They're not a team that festers. They're not a team that ducks in their problems. They're a team that talks things out. They're a team that is accountable to each other more so than they are accountable to anybody else. They play for each other. If you consider, the Boston Celtics when they traded for Kristaps Porzingis, right? They had a team meeting to determine who the starting 5 would be because they felt they had 6 starters. I thought that was pretty cool, and it was an early indication that this was a team that was policing itself. If you look at the Toronto Raptors, the year they won it, all the drama that followed, right? You had all the questions about Kawhi. You had new pieces, new major 2 starters that were being integrated. You had a major in-season trade. So you were implementing Marc Gasol on the fly, right? And you were losing Jonas Valanciunas. So again, there was a lot of turmoil to get through even in that season, right? You had questions about Kyle Lowry's future with the organization because he was so upset about DeMar DeRozan getting traded. So you had a team that ultimately came together from the inside, not from the outside. It wasn't Masai Ujiri flying around trying to have conversations with people. It was Kyle and Kawhi having a conversation. So you got to have the type of people who are willing to have conversations in order to have a team that's willing to be accountable to each other, right? I think that's important. You got to have like an institutional memory, right? You got to have someone who can kind of show people the ropes. I think a lot of people clown the fact that, you have guys like Garrett Temple, Thaddeus Young. I think there's a fan out there or type of fan out there that thinks that the best way to win is just to draft a whole bunch of 18 or 19-year-olds and just let them, fight it out. That's just not the way championships are built. Um, so I think that those are important things. Tactically, you do need to implement somehow a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. You do need to together get that. And I think you can develop a little bit of that from the inside. We are seeing now teams back to back years go to the finals with a star player who is not a great defender. Luka Doncic, right? Last year was Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray. Michael Porter Jr., none of these guys are great defenders. Offense is king right now. So if you have a way to put up points on the basketball on the board, you're going to be successful. So I think that all of these things come together. Then what you need to do is you need to win on the margins. You need to have these smart contracts. You need to draft well. You need to continue to invest in roster spots 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You need to have those guys on the come up. The Raptors had something, I believe, with this championship core. They had the perfect formula. So this is an organization that has really figured it out. Even losing Kawhi, they were so successful. Name me one championship contender. Actually, this is a great question to ask. Can you think of a single championship winner that could lose their best player, okay, in free agency, get absolutely nothing in return, and be better the next year in the regular season? Think about all the championships in NBA history. Think about the best player if they left. If LeBron left the Cleveland Cavaliers, we saw what happened. They literally went right into the lottery. When Shaq left the Lakers, they were worse, right? Um, like when LeBron left the Heat, they were worse. So LeBron leaving a lot of teams. If Steph Curry had left left the Warriors, they would have been worse. I can't think of a single team in NBA history that could have lost their best player for absolutely zilch and gotten better. But the Raptors did that. And that they did that because it wasn't Kawhi that won them a championship. It was a team. It was a team together. Kawhi was, merely what the American media wanted to talk about as the guy who, pushed them over the edge. And I believe that he was a very big part of how they went, that far. And he was key, but he was one of the seven keys. Yesterday, I was watching, Chris Broussard and Nick Wright and all those guys debating about Luka Doncic, right? And how big a part of, and they dared to say this egregious thing. And I hate the way these people talk about it. And I wonder if they really think this, but they said, um, KD left Golden State and still won. Um, Different situation. Golden State was not better after KD left. They were worse after he left. Um, they did not win a championship the next year, if you remember correctly. What are you talking about? No. um, they won, but they've never been as good as they were with KD. Anyways, sorry, I got a little bit derailed there. Again, I think you guys are missing the point. It's not to say that you can't be good if your star player leaves. I'm asking, how could you be better? The Raptors were on track for a better record the year after Kawhi left than the one they had with him. I think that speaks volumes to how good the players that were on the come up, like Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, etc. I mean, you had two all stars right there, right? You had a guy who made two all NBAs in Siakam, and you drafted these guys, you developed these guys. So ultimately, you have to trust that the same group of people that did this will have some sort of institutional memory on how to do this again, replicate the process, understand the standards. I remember in 2003. Um, It's 2003 or 2004. I remember a player was showing us a tour of the Mavericks locker room, right? And he was talking about certain things about he had been on a couple teams. I can't remember. I can't name the player, but he'd been on a couple teams at that point, and he just talked about how great this Mavericks organization was and how they're getting so much better. And the Mavericks were an expansion team, and they were a bit of a laughing stock. But around 2003, 2004, they had Dirk, they had Nowitzki, they had they had Nowitzki and they had Steve Nash, Michael Finley, et cetera. And he was talking about just how great this organization was from the inside, how much they took care of their players, how great the training facility was, how great the locker room was. I remember he was showing us a little video of um, some of the videos, some of the screens that they had installed, and how much they cared about their players. And that was before the Mavericks had ever gone towards an NBA championship, right? That was before the Mavericks had ever even sniffed an NBA championship. But you could see the groundwork there. You could see that institutional stuff. You could see that championship habits were being instilled. And then, of course, a couple of years later, they went to the finals. And then 5 years later, they went back to the finals. And then for after 2011, it's taken them 13 years, but they're back to the finals. It's interesting how certain teams keep doing this. And it's interesting how, when I think about Jerry West, and it's interesting thinking about Jerry West right now because, he just passed away yesterday. And I was thinking how instrumental he was in so many different championships, not only with the Lakers initially, but then the Lakers later on, drafting Kobe, making that huge, huge trade, where they traded Vlade Divac. And the story goes that Kobe just went in as a 17-year-old, draft prospect and whooped one of the best defenders in the NBA, in a game of pickup, and they were just so sure, and they had to trade Vlade Divac, and that was the type of deal that made them very unpopular because Vlade was an incredible center. He was a center who had played starting center in a finals team. You know, like you have to understand how good Vlade was. Like he continued even after being traded for Kobe, he continued to be one of the top 6 centers in the NBA. That would be like today trading. Who would it be like? It would be like trading. Who's the top 6 center? I don't even know who the top 6 centers are right now. It's probably a bad example, but Vlade was a great player. It would be the equivalent of trading, um, like a very, very borderline all-star type of player right now, whoever that is for you. Maybe a Brandon Ingram, and trading that for a 17-year-old rookie, to clear cap space and then going out and signing Shaquille O'Neal and then thinking to yourself, "Hey, like we got Eddie Jones," and then prioritizing that rookie over players who were better than him, guys like Glenn Rice, guys like Eddie Jones, guys like whoever. That's the type of thing that's the type of vision that Jerry West had, right? Think about Jerry West in his role with the LA Clippers, right? What he did for them. Think about also the role that he had with Golden State, right? Keeping Steph Curry. That was on him, right? The Clay Thompson for Kevin Love trade that never happened, right? There was a deal on the table. They could have traded Clay Thompson for Kevin Love, and Jerry West simply said, "We will not do this." How does this person build so many championships, right? It comes down to brain trust. It comes down to an understanding of what works. It comes down to an understanding of reading people. It comes down to an understanding of what really are winning habits. And so the Toronto Raptors have, in my opinion, the brain trust in place that has done it before, right? To some extent, a lot of people are holdovers from the previous championship. And while there may be no players at this point other than Chris Boucher who existed on that roster, and Boucher may be on his way out as early as, next week or 2 weeks from now, right? You have a chance here to do something even bigger and better than the last one. You see, the last one, you kind of stumbled into it. 2013, you try to tank, it doesn't happen. Try to trade Kyle Lowry, doesn't happen. Try to trade DeMar DeRozan, almost traded DeMar DeRozan, didn't happen. Team rallies, goes to the playoffs. We the North is born, voila, and you just go with it. It's almost like you almost faked it until you made it, and then you made it, right? But you continue to build around a pretty flawed core. And it wasn't until that core was broken up, guys like Jonas Valanciunas, guys like DeMar DeRozan, as much as I love them, as much as I respect them, those guys probably just do not have it defensively to win a championship, to go round after round after round. But because the regular season success was so great, it was hard to part with guys who were so young and so good. Now, seeing what has guys like, Siakam, guys like Kawhi Leonard, guys like Kyle Lowry, knowing what has worked for you, seeing the evolution of the league, and surely Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, and guys like this are probably smarter today. You can actually build something and get it right sooner than you did the last time. You can spot your mistakes sooner than you did the last time, right? What's that old quote where somebody said, yeah, actually, I don't even have to use the quote. I literally said something like this to somebody a few weeks ago. Uh, they had given me an assignment to do, and it was for X amount of money. I'm not going to state the money because that's tacky. And I mentioned that I had done it in an hour, and they said, "What?" Like they were shocked that it took me an hour to do this thing. And they, I think maybe in their mind, they might have felt like they had overpaid me because what they had asked me to do only took an hour. And the truth is, I had to just blurt it out. I'm like, yeah, but it took me 25 years to learn how to do this in an hour, right? You don't just wipe away. You don't just start clean, right? You don't. You have a chance here to build something around Scottie Barnes. And Scottie is a way better player to build around than DeMar. And frankly, as much as Raptor fans probably don't want to hear this, at this stage of his career, he is a much better player than Kyle Lowry as well. So the difference here is okay. So I guess this is where we have to get real with ourselves as Raptor fans. In 2015, did you really think the Raptors were a title contender? Did you think they were a title contender in 2016? If I had offered you, like, okay, you can bet your house that the Toronto Raptors are going to make it to the finals, not just win a championship, get to the finals, would you have done it 1-for-1? I don't think you would have. Would you have done it 2-for-1, 3-to-1, 5-to-1? What odds would you need to bet your house that the Raptors would have made it to the finals? I don't think that confidence was there. I agree. I don't think that I ever felt confident that this team could compete on that level. It was nice. It was really nice. But let me ask you a question. If you're an old school if you're an old school fan, right? Was there ever a Raptor team? Was there ever a Raptor team that you felt that level of faith in? Like, if we made it to the finals, we wouldn't be a joke. I'll tell you one team. And maybe I was delusional, but it was that 2001 Vince team. The one that, got so close, one shot away for the Eastern Conference Finals, right? That team felt like it was on the precipice of something in 2000, 1999, 2000. It felt like this is the team. And Kobe Bryant later went on to say, had Tracy McGrady not left, that's the team we would have faced in the finals, no question. Exactly. What did that team have? It had grizzled veterans, it had a young star, it had another young star, and they were on the rise, right? I think that's important. I think you got to have the timing right on it. You got to open that window when you're ready, and then you got to extend it, and then you got to maintain and stretch that window, right? I think about teams like the Portland Trailblazers and the abundance of riches that they had on that roster. Rasheed Wallace, Scottie Pippen. They spent so much money on that team. And then they had they had all these young players on the come up. Quintel Woods, Martell Webster, Bonzi Wells, Jermaine O'Neal. And the best one of them was Jermaine O'Neal. That was the best player. And they let him go. They let him go. And that would have extended their title window out so much. I think about the Detroit Pistons. That Detroit Pistons team was fantastic. They won only one championship, but they had 5 stabs at it. And you know what? You make one decision a little bit differently. You trade instead of drafting Darko Milicic, you draft. I was going to say instead of drafting Darko Rajakovic, instead of drafting Darko Milicic, if you drafted Chris Bosh, Carmelo Anthony, or if you drafted Dwayne Wade, you probably have a championship window that extends further. You probably have a better championship window that extends even further than that. That's the point. The Toronto Raptors have the right facility now. They didn't have the right facility when they started We the North. They have the right infrastructure. They have the right brain trust. I believe they have the right coach as well to spark this type of momentum. They may not have the right coaching staff. I believe they have the right player. The reason I say this is because I watched Luka Doncic not play defense for almost an entire game last night. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I'm really happy that Scottie Barnes is our franchise player because that dude competes hard on defense. And any team that is being led by him or any team that is anchored by him will compete defensively. I think about teams that are inherently selfish, and I think to myself, I'm really happy Scotty's our franchise player because any team where he's on, where there's selfishness, he's the first person who's going to put up his fist and say, no, we're not doing this. It does matter that your franchise player or the guy that you're building around exhibits winning habits, right? It matters that they have winning traits as a leader because ultimately the best teams, the teams that actually go on to win championships, do not take on the identity of their coaches. They do not take on the identity of their cities. They actually take on the identity of their star players, right? Like last night, Luka Doncic starts whining to the referees. Next thing you know, Derek Lively's whining to the referees. Tim Hardaway Jr. is whining to the referees. Kyrie's whining to the referees. You're taking your marching orders from the top. Every single team is like this. That is why the Kawhi thing is so underrated. Um, Interesting. He has leader traits unlike Claw. So I actually believe that Kawhi Leonard had great leadership. Um, Kawhi was stoic. He was not a person who got rowdy. He was not a person who necessarily was going to rah rah and diffuse the situation and be vocal about things. But that's not the only way to be a leader. You got to understand this guy came up under Tim Duncan, and Tim Duncan may not have been very much like that either. Kawhi led by example. I agree with this, right? If you are Sometimes being a leader means setting a standard. I think the Raptors kind of bet on the fact that Pascal Siakam, right? You look at Pascal, right? He comes in, he works hard. I think they were betting that maybe, even though Pascal was not necessarily the most vocal leader, that he and Fred together, Fred being the vocal guy and Pascal being the lead by example guy, could lead the next iteration of the Toronto Raptors. And when that didn't work out, I think they were a little bit confused. And I think it didn't work out because in order to be a lead by example guy, you have to be seen by the league as the guy. And there is some element of holding people accountable. You do have to, whether you vocalize it or not, you do have to some extent, your presence has to elevate others. The fact that you are on the team has to inspire confidence in others. I don't feel, I'm not an NBA player, but I don't feel like if I'm on a basketball court that because Pascal Siakam's on my team, I'm like, oh yeah, we're gonna win this game in the clutch because he's on our team. I don't think that's the case. But I do think that Scottie Barnes does have that late game clutch gene, right? That can make, I believe, can make him the type of person that inspires a lot of confidence in his team. That, hey, let's just keep it to 5. Let's stay connected. Scottie will take us home. I think the Toronto Raptors will open a very soft contention window in 2026. That is my hope and that is my goal for this team. 2026. Mark it down. Tell me I'm wrong later. Fine. Don't care. 2026 is my belief. That means that next year is training wheels and sincerely trying to get to the playoffs. Okay. It is trying to go out and win every single game. And if you fail, and that's okay. To anyone, to any content creators out there who, no, I don't want to share any sources or anything like that, but I promise you, okay, my goal here, okay, I was just a little sidebar here. I have an obligation to this community that if you take something that I say and bring it to a conversation about basketball away from this community, i.e., you go into work tomorrow and you all start talking about the Toronto Raptors and you echo some of my sentiments about the Raptors and adopt them as your own, I want to make sure that what I have said on this channel is accurate, not clickbait, not hype, not, reacting to every fucking thing that comes out, not the Raptors are sure to trade Bruce Brown for this player. No, this is clickbait. It's all clickbait. It's so much clickbait. Why is there so much clickbait? That's what I would love to know. Why does YouTube promote this? I think it's because there's a dopamine response that gets accelerated when there's an immediacy. There's an urgency. Raptors sure to trade. Raptors targeting Zach Edey. But then you become the misinformed consumer of content. You go out and you start saying Raptors are targeting Zach Edey. You become the misinformed, content consumer who goes out and says Raptors are going to tank next year. I promise you they're not. So this is my sort of like forceful but clear admission to this group, to this community. The Raptors are not tanking next year. They're not tanking next year. Okay, they're not tanking next year. This team does not have it in them. They're not going to try to do it. They're not going to they're not going to beat their heads into a wall if they end up in a slow start. I'm sure they'll adjust, but they're not walking into training camp with the goal of losing. They'll play young players, fine. They'll play their rookies, fine. But they're not going out there and trying to strip down and be like the worst team in the league next year to tank for Cooper Flag. It's not in this team's DNA to do it. It's not in their best interest to do it. There's a lot of, good equity and, like goodwill that is lost with the franchise and with the fans. When you do things like this, there's a lot of will and cohesiveness that's lost with your organization. It's really difficult to have people going out every single night and try to get them to compete at their best and to put their best into a workout. And all the while to know, just think about it psychologically, just think about it. How motivated would you be if you went out to work and your boss said, yeah, our goal is to not get clients today. but I still want you to become great at getting clients. Now go out and get a client. But just FYI, our goal is to get 0 clients today. Now go out and do your best and get clients. Pick up an extra book and learn how to get clients. This is not how winning is done. Long term, winning starts with winning habits. And what I thought was so remarkable, right, last year was how the Raptors managed to lose while developing winning habits, right? It's a really, really, really fine road to try to thread that, right? But the Raptors did it anyway. They were able to do that. So I realized that, while every single channel that I can think of in the Toronto Raptor space is basically saying the Raptors are, dead in the water, they're trying to lose, they're trying to tank, they're planning to be bad for 2 years, and they're setting the stage for something that I believe is not real, okay? Because how confused are you hearing that report on the one side and then hearing Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel quickly talking about how they're gonna be better, right? It's very stupid. Um, so I believe that that window opens in 2026. That is my belief, and I believe that the Toronto Raptors should open that window in 2026 and aim to try and keep it open until at least 2030. That would be a very fruitful 4 years. Now, can you extend it to 2032 if some things go right? Can you be the type of organization that can extend it all the way to 2038? Can you go 12 years of championship window? Can you pull the Spurs? That will be great. But you cross that bridge once you get to it. A lot of things have to go right. So we talked about the franchise player, we talked about the right coach, we talked about the coach franchise player having that cohesive thing. We talked about the right leadership, defense, offense. All of these things have to click for you to be a true championship contender. But you don't morph from lottery team to championship contender. Do not take the Dallas Mavericks as an example of that. The Raptors will need to hit on one of these picks coming up. I do believe that they will need to hit on one of these picks. They will probably need to exceptionally get an outstanding surprise boost in terms of value from Grady, RJ, or Emmanuel Quigley. One of these guys has to become a little bit better than they think they're going to be, right? And I believe all 3 of them are capable of being better than you think they're going to be. I think all 3 are capable of it. I'm not sure which of the 3 is actually going to do it, but I think all 3 are capable of it. Then I think you need to get the next step from Scottie Barnes. This will be also very crucial. Then I think you need to really start to get 1 or 2 prospects percolating in that 10 to 17, 10 to 16 zone of your roster. So instead of, maybe Javon Freeman Liberty, but instead of a Ron Harper Jr., maybe you have a City Sissoko there, or a Gigi Jackson, or a Vince Williams. I'm just listing off guys who are the Memphis Grizzlies. Santi Aldama. Imagine having one of those guys. One of those guys could be Christian Koloko, maybe, right? Koloko is back in the gym. Maybe he's working out. Who knows? Maybe the Raptors go and sign him again. Having guys who have higher potential outcomes than Malik Williams, right? And DJ Carlton, or all the guys that the Raptors brought in at the end of the season, right? Having guys like that, this is where I think, organizations really win championships. Because ultimately, when you do need to make a couple of trades, right? A 2-for-1, a 3-for-1, etc., having someone who can move up in that rotation is so helpful, right? It also helps occasionally to have guys with high level prospects like at the bottom of your bench, because those are the kind of guys who push your second unit in all these play groups, right? There's this old saying that iron sharpens iron. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it has been said to me my whole life. Iron sharpens iron, right? When you think about it, your practices are better when your second unit is better. It's really difficult to have competitive scrimmages and practices when your second unit is completely depleted. So I do think that it is important to have internal competition within your organization, internal competition in scrimmages, having institutional leadership, mentorship, within your roster, and having that young come up. So having a completely balanced roster that's not super top heavy. And now I think because people over focus on the, let's call it the record, right, of the Toronto Raptors, they finished with such a horrible record. They must be such a terrible team. Can I remind you that the Toronto Raptors finished with almost an identical record the year before they got Scottie Barnes, and the very next year with Scottie, right? They went on to win 47 or 48 games. 48 games. Okay. So what makes you think that they can't win at least 40 next year? Just write it to me in the comments and let me know. What do you think it is about this team that makes it impossible for them to win 40 wins next year? It's not impossible at all. I mean, much like the Tampa season, a lot of things went wrong. A lot of players missed time. A lot of players weren't used to playing with each other. There's a lot of roster turnover. There was even more roster turnover this year. There was a first year head coach. There's a lot of factors. The league is really strong. Maybe the next year the league won't be as strong. The East was not super strong this year, but I think it could get weaker next year. So what I'm saying is a lot of things had to go wrong for the Toronto Raptors, and then the very next year they get Scottie Barnes, and boom, right? They're back. You think it was Thaddeus Young, the trading of Thaddeus Young? The Raptors have positive pick equity for the first time in a long time, right? So if they are, at the 30 game mark or the 35 game mark of next season, if they are surprisingly good, I don't mind trading a pick. The Pacers pick or whatever, if you're getting a young, good asset back in that moment. And now you're much closer. How differently do you feel about the Raptors opening up a championship contention window in 2026 if they come out next year and they win 43 games and are surprisingly competitive in the first round with a loss? Well, now we feel great. Now we feel fantastic because now it's like, how do we get to the second round? How do we get to the second round? And then once you get to the second round, maybe you get an injury and boom, you have a surprise conference finals berth. In 2 years from now, we're talking about the Raptors in the conference finals. I don't think, I, look, I talk to a lot of Raptor fans. I sense a lot of doom and gloom around this team. Way too much doom and gloom. The Toronto Raptors have, in my opinion, a pretty decent base to build something off of here. It will help tremendously if they can win one of these draft picks this year. Get a surprise boost from one of these guys. What do I mean by surprise boost? I mean a Trace Jackson Davis, a Brandon Pajimski, a Jaime Jaquez, that type of player. Can you get one of those guys? Like one of those guys who's definitively going to be a rotation player in the NBA. Can you plug one of those holes and get a cheap 4-year deal to do it? By the way, 19th overall pick or 31st overall pick, they make peanuts. Having a rotation player making, $1.5 to $2 million a year for the next 4 years is a huge win on the margins. You have two options. You have two opportunities to do it. Just make one of them. If you hit both, holy crap, congratulations. Congratulations. Now it comes down to building that championship window. In 2026, Scottie Barnes will have 3 years left on his deal, I'm assuming, right? Be 2 years or 3 years. So you'll have to convince him because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. And if he becomes as good as I think he's going to become, he's going to have options to go anywhere he wants. At which point, maybe he can go to Miami, be home. He can go to LA, the team that he grew up watching and idolizing. So at that point, you don't want to be the team that just wasted 2 years of his prime tanking. You got to understand that too. There's all these human elements, that people don't seem to understand when it comes to trading guys for draft picks and, tearing down championship contenders and whatever. And I think that it's important to realize that human beings are ultimately making decisions here, right? Human beings are being motivated and demotivated. Human beings are the ones that are winning championships. And in order to do that, you need to keep human beings intrinsically motivated to do that, right? Scottie doesn't have to leave to win a championship somewhere else. He can win one here. You build a core around him, he becomes attached and he becomes invested in that core. You build a team that he's happy to be a part of, and you're successful year after year. You're getting close. Why would anyone want to leave that situation? It's not crazy, right? You have to do what you can do to control what you can control, right? We need a center with the rise of Wemby. Um, I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think Wembanyama is the type of player you're going to scheme out or match up against ever. I think it's just the type of person you're going to have to deal with, and I don't think that necessarily the solution to dealing with Wembanyama is to have a worse version of Wembanyama on your team, unless there is a 7'3", unicorn coming up in next year's draft who can match Victor Wembanyama tit for tat, I don't see a point of like saying, okay, well, we gotta get Alex Sarr or we gotta get Jaren Jackson Jr. to stop Wembanyama. Like, first of all, you're never like if it's a star player, you're never going to stop them. And I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go. Anyways, I think I was feeling a little bit sentimental yesterday about the Raptors 5 years, right? Oh Lord, Zach Edey insides can stop him. Okay, cool. There was a clip today on CBS Sports where someone said Zach Edey is going to be a better Yao Ming. No cap. They said a better version of Yao Ming. Wow. Okay. If the Raptors draft Zach Edey, you're not going to see me lose my mind or get upset. I'm not going to be upset at all. If they do it, it's hopefully because they see something in him that I don't. I trust professionals who are seeing these guys in workouts. If the shooting potential is real with Zach Edey, if he's a little bit more mobile, a little bit more agile, I think his conditioning is awesome given the fact that he's been able to play 35, 36, 37 minutes for Baylor whenever they needed him to. Sorry, Purdue, whenever they needed him to. Um, Wait, geez, I am sleepy. Oh my god. Completely forgot what team he played for a second. So, um, Penny Hardaway saying, Edie will be Zubac type production. I would take a chance at 19, not trade up for him. Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of players that I really like in this draft. Well, there's a lot actually. One of them is Stefan Castle. And I'm kind of perturbed that, now people see him as a top 5 pick because that's sort of where I saw him too. Um, I mentioned, trading up for a draft pick, and I think that would be just a fantastic way to add to this young core that you have coming up. Of course, if you trade up, likely you're giving up something to do it. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, again, 24, 25 is next year, 25, 26 is the year after, right? That's when I'm saying the championship window opens, 2026. So that summer, you have 2 years. You have 2 years to go through your lumps. You have 2 years to, just count it down. It's literally 24 months. From today, you have 24 months before I believe your championship window should open. And by championship window, I don't mean this is the first time you try to get to the playoffs. Okay. Nadeem saying, what position do you see Castle playing? So here's the problem. Castle allegedly wants to play point guard. That could be a really, really big barrier for me in terms of, well, first of all, I don't really see him as a point guard. I see him as like a combo guard. Um, I understand for his development why he would want to play point guard. He's not the greatest shooter, and so it does matter. Yeah, he's a 2. Yeah, I don't know. Like I see some point guard skills in him as well, but with the lack of shooting, I do think he would be more effective for his career. It'd be much better for him to be a 1. Now, if he goes to Washington, he'll have carte blanche, do whatever the hell he wants. He can be a 1, he can be a 2. If he goes to Houston, which I think should be in the realm of possibilities, I think that would be a horrible situation for him because there's already Amen, there's already Jalen Green, there's already Fred VanVleet. It's a really weird thing. Same question for Topic. Topic is definitely a point guard, man. Definitely a point guard. He can play off ball as well, but I would like to see him more so with the ball in his hands. And I think like Stephon Castle is just a better defender, but um, yeah. Anyways, so I guess I wanted to say that as I think back on the Toronto Raptors championship and all the smart trades that had to be made to get there, from Terrence Ross, trading Terrence Ross for Serge Ibaka, trading a pick in that deal as well to get that upgrade. From all the losses that the Raptors took, the humiliating losses against the Nets, against the Wizards of all teams, that was pretty bad. That felt like rock bottom. To all the players that they had to go through and cycle through, from Lou Williams to Salmons to Gravis Vasquez, the guys that had to be compromised, the guys that had to be sacrificed, DeMar DeRozan, Jonas Valanciunas, ultimately to get to a core, and all the right deals, the right trades you had to make, the right picks you had to make to make all that happen. You don't win a championship without Fred VanVleet. You don't win that championship without Pascal Siakam. You don't win that championship without, holding on to Kyle Lowry. And ultimately, that entire cycle started with Brian Colangelo trading a first round pick for him. So, look, I understand around draft time that people get very, very obsessed with draft picks. I understand that. I get that. I get that totally. These are young kids. They're 17, 18 years old. The possibility that one of these guys could turn into the next Giannis, the next Embiid, the next whatever, it's very tantalizing. And of course, the people who, cover the draft for a living, the names, right? Those are the people that talk draft all year round. They are, it's in their business interest for you to believe that these young kids are going to be great, that they're going to be amazing, or that they're going to be so much more than what they really are, because it sets up the first domino of their entire business plan, right? Which is to get you invested, and ultimately sets up the second domino of their business plan, which is to shit talk these players when they eventually don't hit up the potential that they said they had, right? So, step one, I tell everyone that Alex Sarr is Evan Mobley, and he is going to be, close to the Jaren Jackson Jr. and the next Defensive Player of the Year. And step two is he doesn't live up to it. And step three is I label him a bust and explain all the reasons why he's too lazy and he didn't work. All the while ignoring the obvious, which is I just simply got it wrong. I just wasn't right about him, and that was it. You know what I mean? And it's happened time and time again. It's happened with Kwame Brown. It's happened with Tyson Chandler, Eddie Curry. In that draft, it happened um, endlessly with guys like Josh Jackson. Right? It's happened so many times to Juan Wagner, and we always want to invent some story about why these guys failed, why they weren't successful. We want to invent some sort of story about, oh, they could have done this and that, but they didn't. They didn't work hard enough. They didn't sacrifice enough. They couldn't. And it's just like, come on now. Okay. John, I appreciate you, but I think you might be vastly overstating the impact that a 19-year-old can have. I've watched some of these players play basketball, and I don't think either one of them could be on an NBA court today and not get destroyed. Um, Again, it's the overhyping of young players, right? Grady Dick was the best movement shooter, in college basketball, allegedly, when he came out of the draft. And last year, he was unplayable in the G League. I don't think that people really, and he cost his team, he cost the 905 massive minutes in the G League. He couldn't defend. He was struggling with his jump shooting. He was horrible. He was horrible, right? And that's not to say that the long term of Grady Dick is not going to be great. It's just it takes time. It takes time for these guys to build up. Not everyone's going to be Scottie Barnes and Victor Wembanyama and Anthony Davis. Not everyone comes out like this, right? It's so rare that a 19-year-old is a positive contributor at the pro level that I'm almost amazed anytime it happens. I'm amazed that it happens even as often as it does. Derek Lively this year, he was super positive. I'm amazed that that happened. Truly amazed. Okay. You don't win a championship because of, 19 and 20-year-olds. You win a championship because you develop the right 19 and 20-year-olds. And by the time you get to the championship, most of those 19 and 20-year-olds are probably not right. Um, Nevertheless, I think the Toronto Raptors have the institutional memory to build up a championship again. I just hope that this time when they build one, they will not be so stubborn that they will build around pieces and move off of them quicker. Because I do believe that Gasol for, Jonas Valanciunas trade, had it happened sooner, maybe in their careers, even if you had to extend one more pick or whatever, it might have given you two chances, right? It might have given you a better chance with DeMar because Mark was just that much better than Jonas Valanciunas as a defender. I think identifying all of these things that you need to win a championship and then going out and getting them at the right time will be everything. And I do think that timing is everything in life, but I think luck plays a part in championships too. Obviously, you have to be lucky to avoid injuries, and you have to, occasionally get a little bit of luck on the other side. The final thing I want to talk about is this, the Dallas Mavericks being down 3-0. It's never happened in NBA history, no playoffs series ever, where a team has gone down 3-0 and come back to win the championship. Several times, though, a team has come back to make it to a game 7. I think the last time was last year, and that was the Boston Celtics versus the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. That happened last year. There was a case in 2003 with Dirk Nowitzki. and I believe it was the Portland Trailblazers who pushed it. They were down 3-0 and they came back all the way to force game 7. But why hasn't it happened? It's happened in other pro sports. It's happened in it's happened in it's happened in hockey, right? It's happened in Major League Baseball. Why has it not happened in the NBA? Well, I want you to think about it like this. I want you to imagine you're playing roulette, right? And I want you to imagine that you play 250 hands of roulette, 250, but the number 20 never comes up. It never comes up. In 220 hands, it never comes up. 36 numbers on a roulette board, 220 hands, 20 never comes up. And a person gets up and says to you, 20 is never going to happen. It can't happen. 20 is an impossible number. It never hits 20. And they advise you that you should never bet 20. Are they right? No. Now, what if somebody were to tell you, you should bet 20, you should bet everything on 20 because it hasn't come and it's definitely going to happen right now because it hasn't happened in 220 straight turns. 20 hasn't come. It's bound to come. Are they right? No, they are not. That's how probability works, right? And if you're even reasonably good at math, you understand that both those comments are absolutely absurd because every single time that ball goes around that little wheel, the probability is once again exactly what it was, 1 in 36 or 1 in 37 if you include the number 0. And so unless you think the wheel is fixed, the odds of 20 are the same every single time. So what are the actual odds of a team coming back to win a 7-game series after being down 0-3? That is the real question to ask. What are the actual odds? Don't talk about how it's never happened because everything just have to happen once. What are the actual odds of it happening? I would estimate the actual odds of it happening are around 2.5%. Now, the fact that it has never happened is irrelevant because there's a few things that play into that. Number one, it hasn't even happened that often, right? The 3-0 thing hasn't happened that often. Number two, it is almost never the case that the team that is up 3-0 is evenly matched with the team that is down 3-0. It's almost always a case of David versus Goliath. Now, if you believe that the Dallas Mavericks are just that much worse than the Boston Celtics, then yes, it will never happen, right? I get it. But I don't think the Dallas Mavericks are that much worse than the Boston Celtics. I think they're a little bit worse, but I think they're competitive. If you ask me today, what are the chances that the Dallas Mavericks will win 4 straight games? Yes, it's damn near impossible right now, right? But if you ask me after they win game 4, if they win game 4 tomorrow, what are the odds of them winning 3 straight? Suddenly those odds get a little bit better. And if they win one in Boston, you say, what are the odds they'll win 2 straight? Changes again, right? The reason for this is simple. Pressure shifts once the series shifts. At 3-0, you no longer play with pressure. If you're the Dallas Mavericks, you have no pressure right now. Nobody expects you to win. There's no expectations. Everyone's already counted you out. There's absolutely nobody in the world is putting any single amount of money on you winning this. So you play free now. For Boston, all the pressure is on you to close out. Every bit of pressure. And if the Dallas Mavericks win one, that pressure tightens a little bit. Now you got to win it. You don't want to go back to Dallas again. Then in game 5, if you lose, now the pressure is so tight that it could basically strangle you. You could fall apart. You could start having guys trying to do it themselves. You could have guys start losing faith in the process. You could have guys starting to think, are we going to be on the other end of history? I'll leave you with a parting note. I remember when I was like 13 or 12 or whatever, I just kept losing my keys. I lost my keys almost every single week. I lost my keys. My mom was up to her head. Like, she was so annoyed with how often I lost my keys. She tried everything. She tried stapling them to my backpack. She tried putting them around my neck on a lanyard. No matter what she did, I always found a way to lose my keys. And every single time I did, I would come home. I would sit outside my door. Didn't have cell phones back then. And she would always berate me, and she would always say, like, okay, you're such an idiot. Why do you keep losing your keys, etc. So one day my cousin listened to her saying this, and listened to her describing me as someone who always loses his keys. And he said, "You know why he's losing his keys?" And she said, "Why? Because he's an idiot." He said, "No, it's because you keep saying it. It's because you keep saying he's losing, 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 whatever. And the most powerful word that you're using is losing. And so I want you to hand him a key, and I want you to tell him that you trust that he will not lose his key." Do you know, since that day, that was, I want to say it was like 23 years ago, I've lost my keys exactly once and I found them. So that day to this day, I've never technically lost my keys. I lost them exactly once for 6 hours because they fell out of my pocket when I was 24 or 25. How we speak to ourselves matters a lot. In my opinion, it matters a lot. Going out there and saying, don't lose, don't go broke, don't, whatever. I don't want to be like my parents. These are negative statements. They can have a negative influence on your physiology, and ultimately how you operate within the world comes down to the messages that your brain is receiving and how your body is interpreting them. It comes down to that. Positive reinforcement, correct. Go out and win this championship is a different statement than don't lose this championship. You may think that the result is the same. So, to this community, I would say, if you have small kids and you tell them, don't fail, don't do bad in school, that's my goal for you. I don't want you to do bad in school, don't be broke, etc. If you continue to feed them negative information like that, if you continue to reinforce negative ideas, if you start with don't stuff, don't be surprised if in a couple of years they're doing all the things that you told them don't do, because ultimately it's impossible for someone to hear the message, don't be a fuck up, without hearing fuck up as the most powerful word that you used. I think a lot of people get confused about that, but is very true. So it'd be very difficult, in my opinion, for the Boston Celtics to go out there and not be thinking, don't blow this, don't lose this opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. And it doesn't help that ESPN is the way that it is. How much of an onus does Luca have? I think he has a tremendous onus. I think he has a tremendous onus on how much of, there's a tremendous onus on him to, um, to lead by example, to be a good, leader, and also to, contribute as much as he can. But I do not like the way ESPN and all these people are running all this negative stuff about Luca today, man. I really don't. I also don't like the defense of it. So I guess I'm just very upset with all of it. Where, on the one hand, you're saying someone's saying, oh, it's only Luca's fault. Luca's, the one to blame. He's the reason they lost this game. He's the reason they're down in the series. His defense is so bad. There's that one side of the coin. And then there's another side of the coin that's just saying they wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for him. He's the reason. He's the only reason. He's the whole team. I think both are wrong. You have a part to play. No team ever is all one person. You can say Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, etc., played a disproportionately large part in their team's success and failure, and I agree with that. But they are not one-man teams. There are no one-man teams in the NBA. It always takes, more. And anyone who's ever won in the NBA will tell you it did come down to guys coming off the bench, guys who are role players doing their jobs well. Okay. E- Even, teams like, I don't know, the Miami Heat, who were star-studded, they still owe Ray Allen a great deal of credit for not blowing that championship. A team like the Lakers, Derek Fisher, how many big shots? Robert Ory, how many big shots? Right? It does come down. Nobody wins it alone. Nobody wins it alone. So this notion that, it's all Luka's fault is crazy. This notion that Luka's a one-man team and everyone else should just be kissing his ass is also crazy. I think the balance and the truth is somewhere in the middle. People don't want to hear that, but it's true. Luka has a responsibility to his teammates to not complain, because as he complains and he bitches and moans and whatever, his team gets worse. Now, look, this happened in the OKC series as well. And I think the very next game he came out and he wasn't frustrated and he refused to complain. There were a couple times he even looked like he was about to complain and then he just didn't. And his team was better off for it. And he made a note of it after in the post game that, hey, I came out with a concerted effort not to do this. I don't understand why a month later he's completely lost track of how well that worked for him. He needs to go out and he needs to just focus on basketball. I understand that he is playing through a lot of pain, and I really don't like the fact that when people play through pain, we judge people very harshly. But then when people don't play through pain, we call them soft. Kyle Lowry played through a ton of pain. Scottie Barnes last year played through a ton of pain. I'm talking the year before. You know, he played injured, he played hurt, he played through tendonitis, he played through a bum ankle. He rushed back from injury because he wanted to help his team, and people judged him. People judged him very harshly. They said, "Oh, his jump shot sucks. His this sucks. He has work ethic issues. Blah 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 blah." There's something very fundamentally messed up about how we cover athletes, and I hope that we, as a society, can come to fix it a little bit. What these guys do is not easy, um, but it's never individual. It's never one person. It's never all one mistake. It's never all one missed shot. It's always a bigger, more nuanced conversation. Good luck to the Dallas Mavericks tomorrow. I'll be watching. I'll be rooting. You know, I would love to see something happen that is a little bit more competitive than a 4-0 sweep. It's worth noting that the Boston Celtics have not lost a single game on the road, and that is very impressive. Very impressive. I'm thinking there is a team that has technically done that. That's the Lakers 2001. I believe they didn't lose a single game on the road either. They lost their lone game of that entire series to that entire championship run to Allen Iverson and the Sixers at home. So they lost at home, but they never lost on the road. They never lost in Philly. They never lost anywhere else. So it is very, very, very interesting. Billy saying W stream. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess I wanted to do a stream just about reflecting on my thoughts on the Toronto Raptors. I was a very big fan of that team. Of course, I loved Jonas Valanciunas. Loved him. Loved him. Loved DeMar. Loved all that. But man, at some point it was pretty obvious that those guys just kept coming up short in those big moments and that you had to move off of them. And it became pretty obvious to me that this Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet thing wasn't going to work. And look, if you're going to be a championship team, you're gonna have to make some pretty hard choices, right? Sure, losing Terrence Ross was a hard choice, but Serge Ibaka was the right choice, right? I'm sure at some point, you know, trading away DeMar was very difficult, but Kawhi was the obvious choice. You have to make difficult decisions. Cross that bridge when we get there. But ultimately, I think the Raptors are on track. And I guess what I want to say is it's it was very touching to see everybody reflecting on their memories of the championship. A lot of people that I follow on Twitter/X were posting, you know, pictures of themselves when the Raptors won the championship, pictures and videos of themselves running through the streets on parade. You know, shout outs to all of you people who had those videos on standby to post today. And it just gave me sort of a feeling of what this means, you know, why people, you know, care about this so much. Why? Because there is a feeling of you know, life might not be going so well. Might be going through a divorce. Maybe our kids hate us or something, but our team is winning. You know, our team has a chance. Um, I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. I remember, you know, when I was 13 or 14 years old, that like life was really at the pits, and I remember Vince Carter was a really big part of what was keeping me going. Really big part. Seeing what he was gonna do next was a really big part of that, and I realized people struggle for all sorts of different reasons. So, you know, going through a losing, you know, or a period of losing or this bearish outlook, it zaps your hope. It zaps your hope of the team. It zaps your vision for the future. It gives you this relegated, miserable outlook for like it reminds me of like, you know, Romania under Ceausescu, you know, or like Serbia after the war. That's what it feels like to be a Raptor fan right now. Is like you're just examining this the lost, you know, city, you know, that's been just rubble, right? And it's just like, oh my God, it's just all death. And it's just like, do we realize it's not that far off? It's not that far off. I'm telling you guys, if you trust me at all, it's not that far off. A couple of years ago, it felt like a million years away. It really did because it kept doubling down on guys who weren't probably going to make it. But really, like right now, it feels like okay, a lot of the key things that you need to actually do this are here. They just haven't been properly meshed and given time to grow yet. You know what I mean? Like trees, you know, to grow a tree, the first step is planting the seed, right? But I'm struggling right now in terms of the metaphor that I want to do. But if you wanted to grow an apple tree and you planted the seeds for a plum tree, you're not going to grow an apple tree. And watching a team trying to build a championship with a core and a premise, ultimately, and a leader that I believed was very flawed and could never lead them there, that felt like no man's land. Right now, I am very optimistic as a Raptor fan because I believe that the leader, and the franchise leader and all of that is required to win, right? The organizational identity, the type of basketball. Look at who's winning. Look at who's winning. Boston is winning. What is their entire system based on? Shooting, movement, right? Cutting. Like that's what the Raptors are trying to implement. Look at the team that won last year, Denver. What's their entire system based on? Look at the Warriors. What's their entire system based on? All these teams are egalitarian offenses that move the basketball or high in assists, right? The Raptors 2 years ago were like bottom five, bottom two, bottom three in assists. They were a team that pounded the rock in the middle of the floor. They were running their entire system through guys who did not have any business belonging in the league, of superstars doing, 30% usage shit. It was abysmal. It was a terrible, terrible thing. And it was not fun to watch. The Toronto Raptors last year, yeah, sure, they got blown out a few times. They lost a lot of they lost a lot of games. But man, go back and watch the 5 best games from last year and tell me it wasn't better than the 5 best games from the year before. It was. The Toronto Raptors are not that far. That's my message for today. As we rejoice and think back and reflect on the last championship, I do believe the next one will be even better. And I think the next one will come in the next 10 years. And my hope really for this franchise and this city is that the next one will feel like the start of something and not the end of something. Have a good one. Peace, guys. Have a great night and enjoy. I hope you enjoyed your 5-year anniversary, thinking back on this team. All right. Links are in the bio for Amazon wish list and all that stuff. But thank you again for this. I will hook up my podcast arm tomorrow, and I can't wait. I can't wait. All right. Talk to y'all later. Peace.